I got it too high. I think I got it too high. No, I guess that's good. It seems uneven, right? It's like the screen on there. The screen is like a little uneven. Could you like put that this side thing right there, the handle? Pull the handle like to the left. It'll like even. It'll like move or something. Yeah. Hold on. Too much, right? Too much. A little more. Right. Dang. Right now, a little more down. Dang, it's something with the phone. A little down, a little bit more. A little more. Okay, wait, a little more. Okay, right there. Yes, yeah. All right. Hello. How does that sound? Can you hear that? I gotta figure out a way to make it. Let's see. How's the audio sound? Anybody that's watching on there, how does the audio sound from? How's the audio sound at home? Nobody will tell us how the audio sounds here in person. Terry can tell us. Wait, I can't make this go down no more? Hold on, we trying to get this other mic. We trying to get this as far as it go down?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So. Yeah.
Okay. I guess I'm not tall enough. Okay. I don't think that's. Can you hear in this one? Can you hear this? You can hear this?
Barely.
But not that loud, huh? How loud is it? That's loud. That's a little louder. Oh, that's fine. We're not gonna be loud. We're not gonna be louder than the loud ass generator. We buy the churros. This week. They gave us the churros this week. So it's we got a low crowd, but nonetheless, not a lot of people, but nonetheless, same effort. I'm sitting down not because I'm using less effort this week, but because I'm using less energy this week, but not less effort. Less energy, not less effort. Okay, let's start by doing this. Let's start with. This is, it's not going to be as high as before. This is Denzel Duvant. Denzel Duvant was beat at the hands of the Rockford Police Department on January 5th, 2021. Denzel Duvant was beat while he was handcuffed. Let me know how the audio sound in there too, so that way I might not need to be projecting so loudly. But this is Denzel Duvant. Denzel Duvant was beat while he was handcuffed on January 5th, 2021 by the Rockford Police Department. So anybody that's watching this live video, feel free to share this video and put a hashtag Justice for Denzel. Again, this is the face of Denzel Duvant, who was beat January 5th, 2021 in Rockford, Illinois by the Rockford Police Department. This is Faustin Guaitigo, who was murdered by the Winnebago County Sheriff deputies inside of his home on April 10th, 2021. The video is online and on social media, WIFR, WREX. So we want to. It sounds very loud. Oh, she said, very loud. Damn, my fault. I'm too loud. See, it's too loud. There we go. All right, I'll back the mic up some. And the speaker too. All right. Okay, this is. I can't pay too much attention to the camera. All right, this is Faustin Guaitigo. Faustin Guaitigo was murdered April 10th, 2021 by the Winnebago County Sheriff deputies inside of his home. This video can be found online, and so anybody that's watching this video, please share this with Justice for Faustin. This is Jose Gonzalez Jr. Jose Gonzalez Jr. was shot by the Rockford Police Department while he was running away on April 11th, 2021, the day after Faustin Guaitigo was murdered. Jose Gonzalez Jr. is 19 years old. The bullet shattered his femur, and he'll have to have a permanent rod in his leg for the rest of his life at 19. So anybody that's sharing this video, watching this video, share this video. You can put hashtag Justice for Jose. Sound good? Sound good? I hope it sound good. All right, if you watching this video at home, I hope it sound good. Okay, so that's all right. Then I wanna. All right, this is This is the history of the Winnebago Boone Integrity Task Force pamphlet. It's good. It's good. Bad. It's good. Okay, it's good. It's good. All right. This pamphlet is the Winnebago Boone Integrity Task Force pamphlet. Inside this pamphlet, it has different text from stories, news stories that ran about murders that's taken place at the hands of the Rockford Police Department and at the hands of other law enforcement agencies in this city and in this county. Within this pamphlet, you can hear the stories of the countless people who have been victims of police terrorism, mass incarceration, and racial injustice in the city of Rockford, Illinois, and in the county of Winnebago. And I just want to, let's go through and read some of this. Integrity Task Force. The Winnebago Integrity Task Force was assembled in 2010 in an effort to investigate officer-involved shootings and in-custody deaths in the Winnebago County area. It was later expanded in 2013 to include Boone County. Introduced to the public nearly a year after the murder of Mark Barmore by Rockford police officers Oda Poole and Stan North, the Winnebago Boone Integrity Task Force was created in an effort to, quote, improve transparency, end quote, and, quote, bolster public perception, end quote. Theo Glover, the chairman of the task force, stated in 2010. I'd like to note, too, for anybody that's watching this, Theo Glover was in charge of, is now the chief of the Rockford Park District. We are inside Rockford Park. And last year at City Market, Theo Glover oversaw as Winnebago County Sheriff deputies pepper sprayed children who attended a protest. When Theo Glover, the chief of the Park Police, oversaw as police officers stormed areas that were supposed to be safe havens for people protesting and assaulted them and arrested them. So those are some of the things that Theo Glover have been responsible for. However, despite the reasoning for its creation, the task force has not improved transparency nor bolstered public perception among the community. With each shooting and in-custody death that the task force justifies, regardless of the evidence or witnesses presented, it breeds a distrust of the process the city leadership has elected to be put in place surrounding police use of force. In some cities, the Integrity Task Force includes community members along with police officers to ensure that people outside of law enforcement not only play a role in the decision-making process, but they are also kept informed along the way of the investigation. However, that is not how the task force in Winnebago and Boone County has been assembled, nor how its investigations have been conducted. In the following passages, we will present multiple cases that the Integrity Task Force has investigated over the length of its existence. We will provide as much pertinent information as possible about each of these officer-involved shootings and in-custody deaths, including, but not limited to, the name of the victim, the name of the officer or officers involved in the event, the date of the event, the ruling of the task force, and the date of the ruling being released. All information included in this pamphlet is public knowledge and can be accessed with internet searches. We have not personally written anything included in the pamphlet past this point. Again, and one of the things that we're going to do here is we got the churros this week, so it's not a lot of people. But that's okay. We got people that's viewing. People going to watch this later on. Few people passing by. And we have the churros on purpose. It's not an accident that we have the churros. Every week they're moving things around. People want to make sure that they don't have to be next to the people protesting. But that's okay. That's okay. Okay. Second page of the pamphlet. Table of contents. Let's go through some of the dates of people who've been murdered by the Rockford Police Department, Winnebago County Sheriff deputies. Mark Barmore, murdered August 24th, 2009 by the Rockford Police Department. The murder was ruled to be justified. Michael Sago Jr., murdered October 1st, 2011 by Winnebago County Sheriff deputy. The ruling was determined. The murder was ruled to be justified. Philip Johnson, murdered January 28th, 2012 by the Rockford Police Department. The murder was ruled to be justified. Logan Bell, murdered October 11th, 2012 by the Rockford Police Department. The murder was ruled to be justified. Demetrius Bennett, murdered November 1st, 2012 by the Rockford Police Department. The murder was ruled to be justified. Eddie Patterson, murdered November 5th, 2017 by the Rockford Police Department. The murder was ruled to be justified. Carrie Blake, murdered December 30th, 2018 by the Rockford Police Department. The murder was ruled to be justified. Geno Washington died inside of the Winnebago County Jail on October 28th, 2019, with his family not giving any answers about his death, and all the things surrounding his death were found to be justified. Joseph McCormick, December 1st, 2019, so a little over a month later, also died inside the Winnebago County Jail. It was said to be a suicide. Joseph McCormick's family said that they did not believe their family member to be suicidal, but they were given no more answers, and it was the suicide, and his death was ruled to be justified. That was December 1st, 2019. Michael Guzman, murdered August 23rd, 2020, by a South Beloit police officer who ran Mikey Guzman down in the streets. Mikey Guzman was not being chased or in the process of being apprehended. Him being ran over was found to be justified. Tyrus Jones was shot October 2nd, 2020 by Rockford Police Department, and the shooting of Tyrus Jones was found to be justified. Again, this is the Winnebago Boone Integrity Task Force pamphlet. We have a few of these pamphlets up here. If anybody wants one of these pamphlets, don't taste quite as good as churros. Don't taste quite as good as churros, but yeah, I don't really got enough follow-up for that. Okay, let's go through page. We're on page 3. Date of incident, August 24th, 2009. Name of victim, Mark Barmore. Officer involved, Oda Poole and Stan North. Location of event, House of Grace Daycare and Preschool Learning Center. Injuries from event, 1 murdered. Again, this murder is going to take place at a daycare and at a preschool. Just so that way I want to make sure we on the same page. And I'm sorry if I'm not projecting loud enough. Long weeks, long year. A lot of. I got arrested last Friday for writing in chalk. All right. Anyways, I digress. All right. Let's go into reading this. During the late morning on August 24th, 2009, a woman called the Rockford Police Department alleging that Mark Anthony Barmore had threatened to slash her throat the previous night. According to dispatch records, the woman stated that Barmore was sleeping inside and that she would wait outside for police. Units were dispatched and arrived on scene between 10 to 15 minutes after the initial call, but did not apprehend Barmore, reporting that he fled out the back door of the residence. A few minutes later, a Rockford police dispatcher notified patrol units that a person called Skip, fitting the description of the individual for whom police were looking, was seen walking on the Jefferson Street Bridge on Rockford's west side. Dispatch notified units that Skip had apparently pulled a knife out on a girl. Officers North and Poole were assigned to the wagon for Rockford's west side. The officers were dispatched to the Jefferson Street Bridge. 5 minutes after officers North and Poole were assigned to respond to the Jefferson Bridge, dispatch provided more detailed information about the person for whom they were searching, including his name, a more complete physical description, and that Barmore was wanted on a warrant and might still be armed with a knife. A few minutes after receiving this information, officers North and Poole notified dispatch that they had Barmore in sight in the Winnebago Woodlawn area. The evidence shows that officers North and Poole saw Barmore standing outside the House of Grace Church talking with a group of people. According to several of these individuals, Barmore, who came to the church occasionally, was relating trouble he was having, including an altercation with the girl where, quote, he almost had to slit her throat, end quote, resulting in the police coming after him. We're going to be here for a long... We just going to run through these, so I'm going to interject in a moment in which I need to interject. Okay, so just for... Because I know it's going to be some people that's watching or... I don't even listen. there's gonna be some people that's watching that hearing that makes them become less empathetic, or they're no longer empathetic about the situation because Mark Barmore threatened a woman. And so I'm not here advocating threatening women. I would have never threatened a woman. I'm not advocating threatening women, but we must understand that the threat does not someone's life should not be taken because of a threat that they may have or may have not made. And so as you're going through and reading these things, you have to understand that the people who are going to have these run-ins with the police officers and run-ins with law enforcement are most likely going to be people or going to be situations in which it is not a black and white cut and dry, this person was in the wrong, this person was in the right. The reasoning for this story is not for people to say that every decision Mark Barmore ever made in his life was right or wrong. The reasoning for reading through this story is to understand that the murder of Mark Barmore was wrong. That is nothing that any threat that can be made is worthy of someone being killed. Man, this heat kicking my ass. All right, let's where we at? Church members and officials. When Barmore said, okay, I said the word short. I said the word tank top. Where am I at? Where are we at? Winnebago, Woodlawn. Okay. The evidence shows that officers North and Poole saw Barmore standing outside the House of Grace Church. And another thing, these police officers seen this man outside of a church talking to people. And instead of waiting, these police officers went and pursued this man inside of a church. That's what's about to happen. They're about to chase this man inside of a church. Okay. When Barmore saw officers North and Poole and realized they were looking for him, he ran from the group and into the church, slipping in behind a church official who was entering the church. Officer Poole got out of the police vehicle and pursued Barmore, while Officer North drove the vehicle to the side of the building to prevent Barmore from fleeing through the side doors of the church. The doors to the church were locked, but Officer Poole was led into the church by a church official. Two women in the church told Officer Poole that the man had gone downstairs and that there were children in the basement. A young man held the door open for Officer North and also told him that Barmore had gone downstairs. And this is when again this is not to cast aspersions on any of the people that's in this story, but if someone is running from the police, don't tell the police where the person is running to. I know a lot of these things are contradictory to what mainstream society tells people, but police officers can always find somebody a different day. Most of the times, once police officers start running after people, once police officers start chasing after people and their adrenaline start rushing, just like any other human being, they make irrational decisions, and it usually leads to somebody's life being taken that doesn't need to be taken. But anyways, and again, he's chasing this man inside of a church, into a church, with children. Two women in the church told Officer Poole that the man had gone downstairs and that there were children in the basement. A young man held the door open for Officer North and also told him that Barmore had gone downstairs. Officer North went downstairs with Officer Poole right behind him. According to Officer North's statement to RPD, he drew his service weapon just before entering the daycare room at the bottom of the basement stairs. Again, this is a police officer saying that he pulled out his gun before he entered a daycare room inside of a church. Officer Poole, according to his statement, had drawn his weapon while in the hallway of the church upstairs. When officers North and Poole entered the daycare room in the basement, they immediately saw somewhere between 8 and 15 about preschool-aged children, in their estimation, as well as about 2 adults. At least one child in the daycare classroom in the basement saw Barmore enter the classroom and run past the counter through a small kitchen area into what was known as the boiler room or closet. Officer North was the first one to enter the daycare room in the basement and asked, "Where did he go?" or words to that effect. One or more children, possibly the daycare teacher, stated that he had gone into the closet. Sheila Brown, a pastor of the House of Grace Church and proprietor of the daycare, had followed the officers into the basement. Seeing officers' guns drawn, she and the She and the daycare teacher, already in the room, gathered the children into the corner of the classroom opposite the boiler room and shielded the kids with their bodies. Upon being told that Barmore had entered the boiler room, Officer North focused his attention on the boiler room door, which had a small window in the center at about Officer North's eye level. Because it was dark inside the room, Officer North activated his gun-mounted flashlight. Officer Poole entered the basement during this time and was right behind Officer North as Officer North immediately began to open the boiler room door. I gotta get some water. It's hot as hell. All right, and again, this is Churro Week. History of the Winnebago Boone Integrity Task Force. We got multiple of these pamphlets up here. I don't know which mic I'm talking to. We got multiple of these pamphlets up here. Feel free to come and get it. Come and get them. Free pamphlets. Free information. They don't taste as good as churros though, or tacos. Where am I? Where are we at? Okay. All right. Upon being told that Barmore had entered... Oh, no, I went through that already. Okay. Because it was dark inside the room, Officer North activated his gun-mounted flashlight. Officer Poole entered the basement during this time and was right behind Officer North as Officer North immediately began to try to open the boiler room door. Officers North and Poole stated that they attempted to push open the boiler room door... Oh, damn. Whatever. That they attempted to push open the boiler room door... but that Barmore was pushing the door back, attempting to barricade the door closed, in the words of Officer Poole. Witness and officer statements report that the officers yelled at Barmore to come out of the closet, get down, and to put his hands up. Officers North and Poole were able to open the door a few inches at first, and then approximately 12 inches, all while Barmore was attempting to keep the door closed. Barmore reached out and grabbed a long white object, later determined to be a metal ballast cover, at which point officers North and Poole were able to force the door open, pushing Barmore back into the boiler room and causing him to drop the ballast cover. While the officers' statements are ambiguous on this point, it appears that the officers may actually have pursued Barmore into the boiler room. The boiler room, which was 15 feet wide by approximately 33 feet long, was not illuminated except by Officer North's gun-mounted flashlight and any light reaching it from the daycare classroom. According to officer statements, Officer North then stepped back to extend distance between himself and Barmore. Officer Poole held his gun in a close quarters combat style hold close to his chest and remained either inside or at the doorway of the boiler room very close to Barmore. According to the officer's statements, the reason for maintaining this close proximity to Barmore was to keep Barmore from retreating back into the boiler room for where he might get away and take hostages or otherwise cause harm. Officers Poole and North state that Officer Poole was very close to Barmore, and Barmore was able to reach out and grab Officer Poole's service weapon by the barrel. Officer North indicates that Barmore first reached for Officer Poole's service weapon with one hand, then with two. Officer Poole states that Barmore immediately lunged for his weapon with both hands. So even right there, they have separate versions of what they say took place. So this is where we get into an area in which you have to understand that the police department is going to do everything they can to cover for other officers in the police department. But even in this retelling of how they said these things happened, they don't have their stories the same. Okay, and let's continue. In either event, both officers report that very quickly, both Officer Poole and Barmore have both hands on Officer Poole's gun. Barmore with both hands on the barrel of the gun, and Officer Poole with one hand on the gun grip and one hand over Barmore's hands. Officer Poole and Barmore struggled over the gun while within inches of each other and with the gun at chest level. Officer Poole reported that he believed that Barmore was struggling to disarm him and that if Barmore were to succeed, Barmore might use the weapon against one of the officers. Officer Poole reported that when he was able to push the barrel of the weapon towards Barmore, he pulled the trigger and saw the bullet strike Barmore in the neck. Officer Poole reported that after being shot, Barmore moved back and then forward again, maintaining his hold on the gun. Okay, and so what they're saying is that this man, park this shit. Park police. First sign of the park police. Maybe Theo Glover was watching a live. He sent them out. Here we go. Possibly here we go. Maybe not. Here we go. Maybe not. Feels like a here we go. He probably beat somebody else before. Okay, let's my fault. Where we at? Okay, so they want you to believe that this man got shot in the neck. Both police officers got different stories on how he grabbed for the gun. Then they want you to believe he grabbed for the gun. Then while grabbing for the gun, he gets shot in the neck. And then after getting shot in the neck, he lunged forward again and tried to grab the gun again. Which is one of the most illogical things. Again, all right, let's continue to go. And again, this is happening inside of a church. For anybody that's been listening to this entire thing, it's Churro Week. All of this is happening inside of a church. These two police officers chased this man inside of a church where his kids at, and then inside this church they have now shot this man in front of these children that are inside the church. Officer Poole and Barmore continued to struggle, falling against the sink with their backs to Officer North. Officer Poole reported that he heard Officer North discharge his weapon, at which point he was able to pull his gun away from Barmore. Officer Poole reported he then saw Barmore fall against the sink and then fall to the floor, landing on his back. Officer Poole reported that Officer North then broadcast over the police radio a call for officer assistance and medical attention for Barmore. At this point, according to Officer Poole, he yelled to the daycare teachers to take the children from the room. So after they killed him, he said to get the kids out the room. He didn't say to get the kids out the room when he chased them into the church. He didn't say get the kids out the room when he chased them into the boiler room. He said get the kids out the room after they done murdered the man already. Officer North reported that once he saw that Officer Poole and Barmore were struggling over Officer Poole's gun, he instantly realized that this had now turned into a life or death situation for Officer Poole, myself, and possibly the children in the room if Barmore was allowed to get Officer Poole's pistol. Officer North reported that as he waited for Officer Poole to get out of his line of fire, he heard Officer Poole's gun discharge. Officer North reported that he did not know who had fired the gun, who had been hit, or who was in control of the gun. But again, remember that it was said, the other officer said that he shot him in the neck. And he said that after he shot him in the neck, he went back some and then lunged forward. So he would have been able to clearly see who got shot, because the person who got shot took a step back. I can't imagine this man got shot in the neck and didn't grab his neck. Maybe he got superhuman powers because he's black. All right, where we at? Again, this is out of the Winnebago Boone Integrity Task Force pamphlet. We got pamphlets up here. Churro Week. Officer North reported that as Barmore's right rear side faced him, he aimed at Barmore's back and fired what he believed to be 3 or 4 rounds, striking Barmore's back. Officer North reports that Barmore fell to the floor, landing on his back, and that water from a pipe near the sink began spraying. At this point, according to Officer North, there was now a lot of screaming from the children because he shot them in a daycare, in a church, in front of kids, who were now huddled in the far northeast corner of the room with the adults. As additional officers arrived on the scene, Officers North and Poole began yelling for the adult daycare workers to get the children out of there. Officer Hansel, one of the first officers arriving on the scene, placed handcuffs on Barmore without moving him. How you put handcuffs on him without moving him? How you put handcuffs on somebody and you don't move him? Stop resisting. Stop resisting. Sure, I'll weep. Got some prints up in this motherfucker. That's what I'm gonna do. Oh my goodness. All right, let's get back to it. Let me get a drink of water. Again, we are reading from the History of the Winnebago Boone Integrity Task Force pamphlet. If anybody would like one of these pamphlets, they're right on up here. Not as good as churros. Okay, so again, this is the same pattern of someone being shot by the police officers and then being handcuffed after they've been shot by the police officers. Where are we at? Officer Hansel, one of the first officers arriving on scene, placed handcuffs on Barmore without moving him. Officer Hansel reported that Barmore was breathing in very ragged breaths that had several seconds between them. But he still handcuffed him, even though the man was barely breathing, had just been shot in the neck. He still handcuffed him. Officers called for an ambulance within approximately 1 minute after shots were fired. The church where the shooting occurred is across the street from a fire station, and emergency personnel were able to respond within moments of being called. Emergency personnel reported finding Barmore on his back in the kitchen area, not moving, not breathing, and pulseless. Emergency personnel asked permission from an officer to move Barmore from behind the counter to provide more room to work on him, and were given permission by the officer to move Barmore. So this is this black man who they've chased into a church, chased into the daycare of the church, murdered the black man in front of all these children, and then after murdering him, when the paramedics come to work on him, and they handcuffed him after shooting him and murdering him, and the paramedics are asking the police for permission to try to help this man, as if this man's body belongs to the police department. This man's lifeless body belongs to the police department. And again, that gets you into the type of systematic and systemic racism that is pervasive in this city. All right, let's continue. Again, this is from the History of the Winnebago Boone Integrity Task Force pamphlet. We have copies of this pamphlet up here. If you would like a copy of the pamphlet, feel free. All right. Barmore was pronounced dead by emergency personnel while on the scene of the shooting. The events described above, from the moment officers North and Poole saw Barmore in the front of the church to the time they discharged their weapons, shooting and killing him, occurred in just more than 2 minutes. Now that event that it just took us 20-30 minutes to read through, that happened within 2 minutes. Within 2 minutes, they found that they got the call about this man, seen this man in the church, seen this man outside the church, chased the man into the church, into the daycare of the church, murdered him in front of children inside of that daycare, all within 2 minutes, and then handcuffed him after they murdered him. I guess they don't want his ghost to get away. The events described above, from the moment officers North and Poole saw Barmore in the front of the church to the time they discharged their weapons, shooting and killing him, occurred in just more than 2 minutes. The forensic evidence is consistent with Officer Poole's and North's assertion that Officer Poole and Barmore were in close proximity when Officer Poole's weapon was fired, supporting the assertion that Officer Poole and Barmore were struggling over the weapon. The nature of the injury to Barmore's neck, the trajectory of the bullet, analysis of blood patterns, the nature of the presence of Barmore's DNA inside the ejection port of Officer Poole's gun, and the identification of DNA that may have been Poole's underneath Barmore's fingernails are all evidence that Barmore was shot at close range. A witness statement that Barmore stated as he was running downstairs that, quote, he was not going to go back, end quote, or words to that effect, indicate a mindset more likely to engage in struggle rather than surrender. And again, this is just that's no proof that that's a factual statement. They do say some nuts shit in some of these. Let's continue. In addition, on-scene field notes by the sergeants who separately interviewed Officers North and Poole immediately after the shooting while still at the church, because they killed him inside of a church, indicate that the officers' first accounts of the events given minutes after the shooting were materially consistent with their later written supplement reports provided to RPD a few days after the incident. That Barmore grabbed Officer Poole's gun and that a struggle over the gun ensued. This evidence indicates that there was a struggle over Officer Poole's weapon, and Officer Poole shot Barmore from close proximity during this struggle. Officers Poole and North stated that Barmore's hands were on Officer Poole's weapon during the struggle and at the moment the weapon was fired. Upon examination of Poole's weapon, a spent cartridge casing was located lodged in the chamber, consistent with interference with the weapon while being fired. Gunshot residue analysis. Oh my God. Oof. Excuse me, sorry. Gunshot residue analysis did not reveal gunshot residue on Barmore's hands, and Barmore's fingers or handprints were not found on Officer Poole's weapon. The lack of gunshot residue or prints, however, does not preclude the possibility that Barmore's hands were on Poole's weapon when it was fired. GSR is not always found, even when it is known that a hand was on a weapon when it was fired. The evidence is consistent with Officer North's statement that he shot Barmore because he heard a shot and did not know whether Officer Poole had been shot and did not know who had control of Officer Poole's weapon. The forensic evidence is consistent with Officer North's statement that he shot Barmore at Barmore's right rear side faced him, aiming at Barmore's back and firing what he believes to be 3 or 4 rounds. Striking Barmore in the back. 4 cartridge casings from Officer North's gun were found. 3 of the wounds to Barmore were found to have come from Officer North's weapon. The 4th wound to Barmore was a neck wound consistent with the bullet fired from close range by Officer Poole's weapon. The trajectories of the wound caused by bullets from Officer North's weapon, as well as analysis of blood patterns and other forensic evidence, are consistent with Officer North's description of Barmore falling and turning as he was shot. The 4th bullet appears to have struck the water pipe of the sink in the kitchen area, resulting in water spraying the area until the water was turned off. Excuse me. Other than possibly the children in the basement, the only apparent civilian witnesses to Officer Poole's shooting of Barmore said in the written statement she gave to the RPD the day of the incident that she saw Barmore come out of the boiler room with his hands up and saw one officer shoot Barmore from about 4 feet away. Again, this woman is saying that she saw Mark Barmore be shot while unarmed with his hands up in front of these children. This is a civilian giving a different account of what it is that happened. I'm talking about a different account. Okay, let's The witness states she then stepped out of the doorway and heard 2 or 3 additional gunshots after that. This formal statement is consistent with the information she gave to an officer while still on scene moments after the shooting. Later media reports quote this witness stating that the officer shined his flashlight into the boiler room and told him to come out. He came out real slow with his hands up and his head down, and they shot him. He fell over into the sink. He tried to get back up. And they shot him again. A heavy-set officer was the one who was shooting him while he was on the ground. And so this is a child saying they saw this murder take place like that. Ooh. Consistent with the forensic evidence, this witness saw an officer and Barmore facing each other and saw the officer fire 1 time. Also consistent with the evidence, the witness heard 3 shots after she backed away from the door. The witness's perception of the distance between the officer and Barmore may be consistent with the forensic evidence depending upon whether the witness's statement that the officers were, quote, about 4 feet from Barmore meant 4 feet from person to person or from gun to person. The forensic evidence regarding the trajectory of the initial shot does not appear to be consistent with this witness's statement. This witness later reported statements to the media are significantly different than her initial statements to police and are not supported by forensic evidence. A second civilian witness, according to her written statement, stated that she did not see the shooting, but she heard 4 gunshots and then turned to see an officer with his gun pointing in a downward position. Later media reports assert that this witness stated that the officers fired as many as 8 rounds into Barmore, including at least 1 shot into his head. The forensic evidence is consistent with this witness's initial written statement, but not with later media reports. RPD policy authorizes an officer to use deadly force, quote, to protect himself or others from what he reasonably believes to be imminent threat of death or great bodily harm, end quote. A preponderance of the currently available evidence indicates the moment deadly force was used by officers North and Poole, the use of that force was consistent with RPD policy. However, as detailed below, the actions of Officer North and Poole leading up to the shooting violated RPD policy and were not consistent with RPD training or sound tactics. The officers' handling of this incident placed the officers and numerous civilians, including young children, at increased risk of serious harm. Oh my goodness. It's heat. Ooh. Okay. Woo. All right. Again, that was. Hopefully you can hear me on this other mic too. Again, that was an excerpt out of the Winnebago Boone Integrity Task Force pamphlet, "The Murder of Mark Barmore" by the Rockford Police Department. We have multiple copies of this pamphlet up here. If anybody would like a copy of this pamphlet, feel free to come up here and grab one. Very informative. And then let's do this rundown again. This is Denzel Duvant. Denzel Duvant was beat while he was handcuffed at the hands of the Rockford Police Department on January 5th, of 2021. So we want to make sure that if you're watching this video, share this, and you can hashtag it Justice for Denzel. This is Faustin Guaitigo. Faustin Guaitigo was murdered inside his home by the Winnebago County Sheriff deputies, by Sheriff Deputy Brulard. So we want to continue to raise awareness to the murder of Faustin Guaitigo. So you can, if you're watching this video, you can share it with a hashtag Justice for Faustin. And then this is Jose Gonzalez Jr. Jose Gonzalez Jr. was shot by the Rockford Police Department while running away on April 11th, 2021. Jose Gonzalez Jr. Was shot in the leg and it shattered his femur. And he, I believe I'm getting this correct. He has to have a rod put in his leg. This is a 19-year-old young man who was shot for running away. So we want, if you're watching this, share this with a hashtag Justice for Jose. And let's go through this again. This is the history of the Winnebago Boone Integrity Task Force pamphlet. Let's go through a rundown of some of the names inside this pamphlet. Mark Barmore, murdered by the Rockford Police Department, August 24, 2009. The murder was found to be justified. Michael Sago Jr., murdered by an off-duty Winnebago County Sheriff deputy on October 1st, 2011. The murder was found to be justified. Philip Johnson, murdered January 28, 2012 by the Rockford Police Department. The murder was found to be justified. Logan Bell, murdered October 11, 2012 by the Rockford Police Department. The murder was found to be justified. Demetrius Bennett, murdered November 1st, 2012 by the Rockford Police Department. The murder was found to be justified. So that's three murders that took place at the hands of the Rockford Police Department in 2012. Eddie Patterson, murdered November 5th, 2017 by the Rockford Police Department. That murder was found to be justified. Kerry Blake, murdered December 30th, 2018 by the Rockford Police Department. That murder was found to be justified. Gino Washington died October 28th inside the Winnebago County Jail. His family was never given any answers, and everything was ruled justified around his death. Joseph McCormick was said to have committed suicide inside the Winnebago County Jail. His family did not believe he was suicidal. They never received substantial answers from the Winnebago County Jail, and everything was ruled justified. Mikey Guzman was ran down by South Beloit police officer, and the police officer was found to have done no wrongdoing in running him down or running him over, and that took place August 23rd, 2020. And then Tyrus Jones was shot. Tyrus Jones was shot in October 2nd of 2020 by the Rockford Police Department. He was shot while running away. That was ruled to be justified. And again, this is the Winnebago Boone Integrity Task Force pamphlet. Has all these contents inside of it. Please take some time to come grab it. I'm gonna run to the bathroom real quick. You do it? You do it? Oh damn! Oh my goodness!
All right, we're out here. Hello? We're out here at Food Truck Tuesday. We're reading the history of the Winnebago Boone County Integrity Task Force.
Is this on?
I read this one last week. Let's do Logan Bell. Alright, the date of the incident was October 11th, 2012. Name of victim, Logan Bell. Officer involved, Philip Statler and Jeremiah Cerzelli. 1700 block of South Central. Logan was murdered. Winnebago Integrity Task Force findings justified. Logan Bell, age 18, was a sweet and caring young man who suffered from a social disorder. Toxicology reports reveal he hadn't been taking medication prescribed for bipolar symptoms. His grandmother called the police, explaining that Logan had a handgun, a pellet pistol, and feared he was a danger to himself. Rockford PD Sergeant Andre Brass and two officers, Philip Statler and Jeremiah Cerzelli, found Logan in a field near Pilgrim Baptist Church at 1703 South Central, waving the Crossman C11. They ordered him to put it down. Shoot me, Logan replied. You're going to have to shoot me. I'm not going to drop the gun. He fired a BB at Brass, who, uninjured, tripped while retreating. Statler and Cerzelli hit Logan 16 times. 10 were through and through, explained Winnebago County Coroner Sue Fiducia. 3 in the head, the fatal shots through the heart and lung. And standing in the field alongside former Alderman Victory Bell, Lloyd Johnston, president of the Rockford NAACP, and Oliver Emerson, a Pilgrim Baptist deacon, the Reverend Kenneth Board said police should have done more to talk Logan down. Mental illness should be handled with concern and compassion. He read, As we see it, the only criminal here is the response. Rockford Police Chief Chet Epperson said, Our hearts go out to the Bell family. The officers did the best they could in a split-second situation. In our line of work, we do not have the option of choosing when and where we will become involved in deadly force. Well, that sounds like a bunch of malarkey. The Winnebago County Integrity Task Force, 35 officers from 13 area law enforcement agencies, investigated the incident. Winnebago County State's Attorney to determine whether the use of force was justified. Illinois State Police Lieutenant Kurt Kavanaugh, who led the Integrity Task Force, determined the officer's action to be justified. Our hearts do go out to them, he said. It is very unfortunate this had to happen. Well, it didn't have to happen. They knew that it was a BB gun. He shot Brass with the BB. It didn't hurt him. And then they shot him 16 times. It didn't have to happen. They said they had to, in our line of work, we do not have the option of choosing when or where we will become involved in deadly force. Yes, you do. When somebody shoots you with a BB, you don't have to kill them. You don't have to shoot them 16 times. It's your decision. The next one is Demetrius Bennett, November 1st, 2012. Officers involved: James Presley, Ryan Marco, Mark Danner, and Nolan Walker. Location of event: 1800 block of Montague Street. Demetrius Bennett was murdered. The Winnebago Boone Integrity Task Force findings justified. Release date of findings: April 11th, 2013. So that was 8 years to the day before Owen McGinnis shot Jose Gonzalez in the leg as he was running away. Demetrius Bennett, age 31, fought with his wife, Amanda Armbruster, shortly before 6 a.m. She visited the Winnebago County Justice Center asking for help retrieving personal items from their home at 1811 Montague, a debilitated one-story A-frame half-size window above vinyl siding. Officers Jane Presley, Ryan Marco, Mark Danner, and Nolan Walker accompanied her. Demetrius answered the door, then went to grab one of his two children. Police told him to put the child down. He eventually did. Amanda took both children out of the home. The cops surrounded Demetrius in the kitchen, a very small area. For about an hour, they ordered, requested, and cajoled him to submit to arrest. He grabbed a serrated kitchen knife. They offered to let him handcuff himself, then tried pepper spray in the face. Demetrius shielded his eyes with a plastic bag and made a move. No reports indicate how many shots the officers fired. On 11th of April 2013, Commander of the Winnebago and Boone County's Integrity Task Force, Todd Schaefer, Illinois Special Prosecutor Dave Neal concluded that deadly force was absolutely justified. Demetrius Bennett remained defiant, Neal said. Okay, where are we at here? He indicated to police officers he was a man who would fight, that he was not a man who in any way would give in to the demands, lawful commands, and requests of the Rockford police officers. These officers are going back to work Sunday, and that there is no misconduct at all by these officers in what was conducted back in November. Rockford Chet Epperson added. An attorney representing the family said he doubts the official version and was shocked, surprised, and disappointed by the verdict. Well, he shouldn't have been shocked, surprised, and disappointed by the verdict, because every time they come back justified. We'll be shocked if they ever come back unjustified. That's the lesson of this pamphlet, is that no matter the circumstances, when an officer shoots somebody, murders somebody in cold blood in their own home, it's justified. So much for the castle doctrine. Okay. All right, we'll do Eddie Patterson, November 5th, 2017. Officer involved, Jamie Cox. Location of event, State Street and Dawn Avenue. But it didn't stay there. Civilian injuries from event. Eddie Patterson was murdered. Winnebago and Boone Integrity Task Force findings justified. Release date of findings, July 12, 2018. In a press conference Thursday morning, Winnebago County State's Attorney Joe Briscato announces results in the November 17 deaths of Rockford officer Jamie Cox, 30, and Eddie Patterson, 49. According to investigators with the Winnebago Boone County Integrity Task Force, Officer Jamie Cox was justified in his use of deadly force during the traffic stop. Investigators say in a review of the evidence, Officer Cox attempted to pull over Patterson in his 1994 Chevrolet pickup truck near East State Street and Dawn Avenue. Officer Cox relayed information that he was pulling Patterson over for driving on a revoked driver's license and driving with expired plates. According to police, Patterson's truck was found by responding officers about 2 blocks north of the original traffic stop near the parking lot of the Unitarian Universalist Church. The Winnebago County coroner releases inquest results in the death of 49-year-old Rockford resident Eddie Patterson. The jury rules Patterson's November 5th death a homicide. Inquest results say Patterson had 2 gunshot wounds. He was found lying across the front seat with his head near the passenger door. According to the inquest, Patterson provided a false name, and when he was pulled over by Rockford officer Jamie Cox, a background check determined his license was revoked. Patterson drove off with Cox caught inside the vehicle. He was driving about 58 miles per hour when he crashed into a tree about 2 blocks away from the initial traffic stop. Jury findings released Thursday determined Cox's death was a homicide and said he died after Patterson crashed into the tree. A task force previously determined Cox's use of deadly force against Patterson justified. Craig Sandberg, an attorney representing the family of Eddie Patterson, has filed a wrongful death lawsuit in Winnebago County Court against the city of Rockford, arguing that the shooting that killed Patterson was not justified. On Thursday, he said the task force findings in Mr. Bruscato's opinion, and he said he looks forward to the city and task force handing over their findings so the court proceedings can move forward. It really was a circus by our state's attorney because you're concluding that Mr. Cox was justified in the homicide of Eddie Patterson, while Bruscato gave no evidence of what happened to justify Officer Cox for shooting Eddie Patterson. Kingdom Authority Church pastor Melvin Brown said during a news conference outside the home of the Patterson family, "We feel that Mr. Cox was very reckless and caused these events," Brown said. Brown and Patterson's families are calling for the U.S. Justice Department to investigate. So, Jamie Cox pulled somebody over, Eddie Patterson, for driving on a revoked and driving with expired plates. So that's the basic underlying reason why he shot, why he pulled him over and then ended up shooting Eddie Patterson in the back while he was in his vehicle. The way it makes sense to me is that when Jamie Cox pulled him over, Eddie Patterson opened the door and they were talking out of an open door of the truck. There was so Jamie Cox was like half in the vehicle. Eddie Patterson never put the vehicle in park. Jamie Cox trying to give him orders and tries to reach across him to either put the vehicle in park or most likely to put it in park. So then as soon as that was going on, then there was a scuffle for control of the truck. And when Jamie Cox pulled his weapon, Eddie Patterson must have turned away, because how would he get shot in the back? So when he turns away, he gets shot in the back. He's still got his foot on the brake. The truck's not in park. So then he lets the foot off the brake. He gets shot. He possibly puts the foot on the gas, and then they go careening down the street. Now, since Eddie Patterson was slumped over in the seat by the passenger door, Jamie Cox was controlling the vehicle as they went 2 blocks. There's no way they would have made it 2 blocks without hitting anything if somebody wasn't driving. So Jamie Cox was driving when they hit the tree at 58 miles per hour. So I don't see how Eddie Patterson killed Jamie Cox if he was already shot in the back and laying in the passenger seat. So we're here at Food Truck Tuesday, reading out of the history of the Winnebago Boone and County Integrity Task Force. Recent cases we got that aren't in the task force pamphlet. Jose Gonzalez got shot in the leg. He got shot in the leg, busted his femur. He's going to have a steel rod in his leg for the rest of his life. He's 19 years old. They say they found a weapon on him, but the only evidence they showed in their video was a picture of a gun with no context laying in some grass. This is Faustin Guatigo. He's a 27-year-old African man, worked at Amazon. He had a domestic altercation with his wife, Rose, who didn't understand the threat that she put her husband in when she called the cops. She called from the Casey's at Harrison and South Mulford. The sheriff's deputy shows up at the Casey's. The wife tells them what happened. They go back to the house. They can't find him, so they leave. They come back hours later. Another call from the wife. She's next door at the neighbors. Says that he's at home now. They come out. Try to arrest him. He goes in his house, locks the door. His wife gives him the keys. They come in the house. The first deputy in the house has a sorry, I'm having brain fart. A taser. Comes in with a taser and then a gun. The second guy has his gun out. So what's the point of the taser if the second cop's got the gun? You know, you're either going to tase him or you're going to shoot him. So as the first cop walks into the kitchen, Faustin is coming up the stairs out of the basement. They said he's got a pipe. They tell him to stop. He's at the very top of the stairs as they start shooting. They shoot him all the way into the ground till they're standing over him, shooting him. And then that first officer, after he's already on the ground, already had multiple shots fired into him, standing over him, point blank range, hits him with the taser. Then officer that's standing outside the house shoots into the house where there's 3 other officers and Faustin on the